What's going on, y'all? It's your man, Stephen Bardo, coming at you with another edition of this is a shorter edition of Bardo's Breakdown. I just wanted to talk about what happened over the weekend with USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. You know, we talked about this. I did a quick post about this. Man, I can't use my IG right now. So I'll just go this right here. I talked about it quickly in a post, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper because I know some of you had questions about the implications of USC and UCLA coming to the Big Ten Conference in 2 seasons. If you hadn't heard, over the weekend, USC and UCLA out of the Pac-12 conference agreed to join the Big Ten Conference in 2 years. Now, people might be asking, why is this happening? The Pac-12 is a viable conference. They've been around forever. They were the Pac-10. Now they're the Pac-12 with conference expansion. And now it looks as though the Pac-12 may start to lose some of their schools with this latest development. So USC and UCLA, the two Los Angeles schools, will join the Big Ten Conference. Now, that means the biggest thing to me, what that means is that you now have the number 1, 2, and 3 TV markets in the country in the Big Ten footprint. So you've got the New York market with Rutgers. You've got the Chicago market with Northwestern Illinois, all that. And then the Los Angeles market, the number 2 market with UCLA and USC. And so Big Ten programs right now, I believe with their current television package, each program gets over $50 million per year. When the Big Ten Conference right now is renegotiating their media rights deals. So right now, as they're going through this negotiation, we knew that they were going to make more money. But what happens is these television networks make all of this stuff move, right? So now Fox Sports is talking to the Big Ten Conference. ESPN is talking to the SEC Conference. And so what happens is, let's take the SEC, for example. When Texas and Oklahoma decided to leave the Big 12 Conference and join the SEC, many believe that the ESPN, with their knowledge of television markets and schools and programs and their fan bases, ESPN will look at and say, the SEC looks like this right now, this current footprint. The best college football conference in the country, and a lot of media rights trying to come down and cover SEC football and basketball. Plus, their Olympic sports are really, really good in the SEC, similar to the Big Ten. But what ESPN says is like, look, they look at the landscape and they say, well, SEC, if you can add Texas and Oklahoma, this is what the package will look like for each school moving forward. Meaning what the monetary package will look like. So when the SEC looks at that, and when Texas and Oklahoma were in the Big 12 conference and they found themselves falling further and further behind the SEC and the Big 10, because if you guys remember, there was some rumor at one time that Texas was really interested in joining the Big 10 conference. I don't know if you guys remember that. I believe that was about 4 or 5 years ago. There was some talk about Texas joining the Big Ten because at that time, the Big Ten seemed to have the most favorable financial package for all these college programs. But Texas held pat, and then the SEC comes in, renegotiating their media deal, and ESPN whispers to Texas and Oklahoma and the SEC partners, hey, this is what you could look like if you could get Texas and Oklahoma to join. Well, once you show the numbers to these Power 5 conferences that are trying to compete at the highest level, I think it's a no-brainer. That's why Texas and Oklahoma departed for the SEC. I believe they will be 23-24. They will start to compete in the SEC, not this upcoming season, but the season after next. I believe 23-24. And so that's how that scenario set up. So I believe the same scenario with Fox came to fruition as well, because they're in the negotiation window right now, and talking to the Big Ten Conference, and they said, well, let's look at the landscape right now. The Pac-12 and the Big 12 conferences are really falling behind in the network television and the monetary packages that their respective programs can receive, the Big 12 and Pac-12. Pac-12 for various reasons, because the Pac-12 networks was a little weird in how it was configured. And look, Pac-12 schools, it's tough. It's tough to really garner the number one eye in those markets. Think about it. Washington is in Seattle. They're going up against the Seahawks, right? Oregon, not necessarily. They're kind of on their own. But you look at Cal, Stanford, they're competing against the 49ers, the Warriors. We're talking football and men's basketball. They're competing against the 49ers and the Warriors. You go down to Los Angeles, you got the Lakers, the Clippers, the Rams, who just won the NFL title. A lot of competition in these marketplaces. Arizona schools with Phoenix, with the Arizona Cardinals and the Phoenix Suns. And so it's really difficult. If you look at the Big Ten and SEC, you rarely see those programs going head up against professional teams. Now, Northwestern and Chicago here, they definitely have to go up against the Bulls, the Bears, right? So that's a little bit of a rub. But most of the other programs in the SEC and the Big Ten conferences, they don't have to battle for fans' eyeballs and attention. They don't have to battle against professional franchises in those particular markets. So it's really difficult for Pac-12 schools and the Pac-12 conference. It was going to be difficult for them to keep up with the money and media race that the SEC and the Big Ten are engaged in, because they're just at a higher level than what the Big 12 and the Pac-12 can compete with currently. Now that's all shifting. So what's up, Let's Toast Media? Hey, Chuck, how you doing? Good afternoon. Thanks for joining. SEC made a powerful move with Texas and Oklahoma because the other conferences were supposed to hold their own. The Pac-12 just blew up. Yeah, I think so. Let's Toast Media, and I always appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much for joining. I think what the Pac-12, ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to television revenue. It really, really does. What is your media package for your particular conference? And what is the monetary distribution to each program? So the SEC is trying to keep up with the Big Ten. The Big Ten is king in terms of media rights and the money that they generate per program, because the Big Ten network got out ahead of everyone else and established itself as a serious entity in the sports media space. And so the Big Ten network is a huge boon, in addition to the Fox contract, the ESPN contract, the CBS contract. I think there might be another one. It's ESPN. In order of importance, I believe it goes Fox Sports, then it's ESPN, CBS, then it's Big Ten Network, and then I think it's everyone else. So the Big Ten has a plethora of media partners. And so the SEC is similar. I think CBS lost out on their package with the SEC. I think ESPN has taken that over. So when you look at the SEC, it's ESPN, then it's the SEC network, and then everyone else. I believe that's how their structure is. And so I think it saddens me, because the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are great conferences, and it's a dollars and cents game, ladies and gentlemen. It's not really, I don't think that these particular programs have it out for these other conferences and things like that. It's a dog eat dog world right now. And college sports, once they ripped off the Band-Aid of amateurism, you're seeing that it's all dollars and cents now, right? We always used to have this, this romantic notion that these are student athletes. They're not student athletes. They're players who are playing at a school and being required to go to class to stay eligible to play this sport. That's what they really are. That's not a student athlete. That's an athlete mercenary, so to speak, for lack of a better phrase. I'm going to have to come up with a new term because the student athlete thing no longer applies. So, like I said, the Big Ten and the SEC are both looking like the super conferences. So they're starting to pluck from the other Power 5 conferences. That, the Big Ten schools are set. The existing Big Ten schools are set. They're not looking to go anywhere because they're making the most money. The SEC schools are set because they're right on the heels of the Big Ten in terms of monetary packages for their particular programs. So these look like the two super conferences. So the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, don't be surprised, ladies and gentlemen, if you start to see these conferences lose schools to the Big Ten and the SEC. And here's what will make the difference. It's all television revenue. So if you look at the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC, okay? The ACC has some nice markets left. Syracuse has a New York market, but the Big Ten already has a presence there, right? Boston College. Boston is a good television market, but it's a great college city. It's got a bunch of colleges there, but that's a pro sports city. New England Patriots, Boston Celtics, Boston Red Sox, that's a pro sports city. So I don't know that you would see, maybe you might see the Big Ten interested in entering the Boston television market. I doubt the SEC would look at that just from a competitive and travel standpoint, but you never know, right? Big 12, look at the Big 12. There was a thought at one point that Missouri and Kansas would move to the Big Ten from a geographical footprint situation. It would fit nicely, but those aren't very big. They don't really have large television markets. Kansas City market is a good one. St. Louis market is a good one, but it doesn't compare to LA, Chicago, New York. I don't think it may compare to Detroit, where the Michigan and Michigan State schools reside. Columbus, Ohio is a big television market, ladies and gentlemen. Columbus, Ohio is the biggest city in the state of Ohio. I don't know if most people know that. So the Big Ten has some very, very big television markets. And so when we look at the way these things are going to shift, the main thing is the television market. So ACC schools, the two that jump out to me are Georgia Tech and Miami because of Atlanta and Miami, right? The bigger markets, I think, from the Big 12 have left already, with Texas and Oklahoma going, and then now Cincinnati, Central Florida. There's two other ones that are coming in. Central Florida, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU will be joining the Big 12 conference in a couple seasons. And so the Big 12 is starting to reach out and trying to bolster itself as the defections of Oklahoma and Texas have occurred. So that's what I want to prep you guys to look for. The television market is going to drive this thing, right? You'll see Pac-12 and Big 12 schools try to bring in other programs, but think about it. Look what the Big 12 did. Central Florida is in Tampa. Tampa's a nice size television market. That's a nice size market. Cincinnati, nice size market. Houston, number 4 television market in the country, I believe, right behind Chicago. So Houston's a huge market. And then BYU, not necessarily a television play, not necessarily a television market per se, but BYU represents a whole group of a religion. And so that's a large swath of people. That's a large group. So you notice now that these schools that when Pac-12 and Big 12 go after these other programs, if their charter members leave, that's one of the things to look at. So one of the things that they were talking about when this news came out over the weekend was Oregon and Washington going to join USC and UCLA and joining the Big Ten. And what the Big Ten Conference has said now, ladies and gentlemen, is that they're going to sit pat. You know why? Because the crown jewel is still out there right now. Who is the crown jewel right now in college football? Because it's not college basketball, has nothing to do with any of this conference realignment. Absolutely nothing. College basketball coaches don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. Football is dictating all of this, right? What's the one crown jewel still left out there? Robert Mitchell hit it. It's Notre Dame, ladies and gentlemen. Notre Dame has been independent. They've played an ACC schedule in every sport, I believe, outside of football. They've played an ACC schedule, but their football program has been independent for years because they've got a national television network deal with NBC. It's been in place for I think the last 15 or 20 years. And the Big Ten has always wanted Notre Dame to come into the fold, but Notre Dame has kept their independence because of that national television contract. They're the only school in the country that has a national television contract solely for their football program. Right now, the landscape is shifting so quickly. Can they afford to sit on the sidelines and watch the SEC and Big Ten get bigger and bigger and bigger? Can they afford that? Because I probably should have looked at this beforehand, but I would guess that Notre Dame's package, what they get from NBC every year, is probably in the range of 25 to 40 million. The only reason I say that is because Notre Dame has not been moved off of their position. So whatever they were getting from NBC is probably not much less than what each Big Ten program is getting from their package of media rights. So, but this new development with UCLA and USC coming into the fold, you guys remember now, Notre Dame plays USC every year. That's one of the premier college football matchups in the country every single year. What's that going to look like now that USC in 2 years will be in the Big Ten, right? Will Notre Dame still sit on the sidelines and get their 25 to 40 million? I'm guesstimating on that. Let's say it's even 50 million. Let's say Notre Dame gets 50 million each year from their media rights. Well, once UCLA and USC kick in a couple seasons in the Big Ten, I don't know how long it will take, but it would probably be within a few years. Each Big Ten program will take home $100 million per year. And if you don't have the kind of resources like that, if you can't come close to $100 million per year, that's why UCLA and USC jump ship. That's why Texas and Oklahoma, looking at the Big 12 media rights package, they look at SEC and like, oh, wait a minute. If we go to the SEC, they're pulling down, I don't know, 75, 80 million, 90 million a year. I mean, we're going to stay in the Big 12 and get 36 million, or we're going to go to SEC and get 90. So that's what we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen. And will Oregon and Washington join the Big Ten? The Big Ten is in such a good position right now that they can tell people to wait because they're holding out for Notre Dame. They're not in a rush. And Kevin Warren, Big Ten commissioner, is doing an outstanding job. He is not getting the credit that he deserves. This was a shrewd move that came out of nowhere. They kept this so low key. Nobody heard any kind of inkling of USC, UCLA joining the Big Ten. They kept that under wraps so well. And that's extremely hard to do when you have that many moving pieces that's going to make that big of a splash. So Kevin Warren, kudos to the Big Ten commissioner for his decorum, for his ability to nurture relationships, and to have the vision of the Big Ten being the premier conference in the country, not only from attendance wise, but from a monetary position as well. Let me get to some of these comments. Boy, you guys are on it. Anastasia Walker, one of the tribe members, one of my favorites. Can you discuss the process of schools making efforts to become a part of another conference? You know what, Anastasia? I'm not sure that there is I'm not sure if there's a tried and true process. I think what happens is when these conferences are in these negotiating windows. So what happened, let me give you an addendum. When UCLA and USC decided to join the Big Ten Conference, you know what the Pac-12 did? They had an emergency meeting among the school presidents, along with the Pac-12 commissioner, Kliakoff, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. They made a decision to enter into the media rights negotiating windows immediately, because they've got to reassure the remaining Pac-12 members that they're going to be aggressive in trying to get as close to the Big Ten and SEC packages as possible. Because right now what you're seeing, the Big 12 conference just went out and hired this guy, Yormack, who used to be the CEO of Rock Nation, ladies and gentlemen. Rock Nation, as you know, Jay-Z is involved in this organization. They do a bunch of different stuff, but this guy has relationships and contacts in the entertainment, sports, and media field. And this guy, he's now the new Big 12 commissioner. There are rumors that Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah may join the Big 12. So what the Pac-12 did, Anastasia, is say, you know what? We were supposed to wait and enter into media negotiations rights and window, but they had an emergency meeting, and now they said, look, we got to do it now. We can't afford to wait, because if we wait for that negotiating window, we might lose 2 to 4 more schools, 2 to 4 more programs. We can't allow that. So the process now, all the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed now, Anastasia. But the process is generally USC may have an intermediary. They may hire a consultant or a lawyer or an attorney to contact the Big Ten Conference or contact Fox Sports and say, listen, we see the landscape. We see what's going on. There's rumors that the Big Ten Conference can, in its current state, this was, they were talking upwards of near 100 million before UCLA and USC said they want to join the Big Ten. So there's a lot that's done behind closed doors. And then once the announcements are made, then the legal stuff, the processes start to kick in and things take place. But I don't know if there is a particular process that programs, there's a tried and true process. I don't think that's what it is. I think that you hire somebody that goes behind closed doors, that if this person is contacting the Big Ten Conference or Fox Sports, that it doesn't look out of place. So it's very clandestine. And I hope that helps a little bit, but I think that that's how the process gets done. It's going to look like the NFL, AFC, SEC, NFL, Big Ten. It looks that way. Robert Mitchell, can ACC renegotiate a television deal? Great question, Robert. I think they can if they force the issue. They might have to break some bylaws that are in their conference mandate, but everything is negotiable now. There's nothing ironclad anymore in college sports. Everything is negotiable. So if I'm Jim Phillips, who is a good friend of mine, he is an Illini, by the way, ACC commissioner. Jim Phillips is a sharp guy. He's been in this business a long time. If it doesn't look advantageous for ACC schools, he may move to do something drastic to, hey, let's re-examine where we are media-wise, because we've got to stay competitive. Les Toast Media says, I think the next move will happen next summer. It could. It could very well, or it could happen even sooner. Anastasia Walker says, can the federal government regulate a conference if it gets too big? Great question, Anastasia. I don't think so. I don't think so because think about it. The governing body, which is the NCAA, will probably not exist here in the next 5 years. So if the governing body over college sports can't regulate what's going on, the federal government, I'm sure the federal government has oversight powers, Anastasia. And if they wanted to, if they saw something of a monopoly, they could step in, but it would be a very unprecedented step. I've not seen the federal government come in and try to do something to really change the very nature of college sports. I have not seen that in history, and I don't think that we'll see that because, again, government oversight, I don't think they want to really get in the way of capitalism in its purest sense, and that's what we're looking at right now in college sports. Let's see. What's up, Antoine Deshawn? Hope you're enjoying Bardo's Breakdown. Please like and share this video for all of your friends and family to enjoy as well. That's my man, Antoine Deshawn, who y'all saw. He was with me on the ones and twos for the NBA draft, doing a fantastic job. Anastasia Walker says, it wasn't until I saw ESPN's 30 for 30 on the Fab Five that I understood how college sports profit from their students. Jalen Rose talked about the popularity of his team, but being poor at the same time. He talked about walking past Nike Town and seeing numerous shirts with his image being sold for $50. He never received any residuals. And this is the NCAA's response with the NIL legislation, Anastasia, so that these athletes can have an opportunity to make money off their name, image, and likeness. Even though, Anastasia, in so doing, these athletes cannot use anything related to the program. So it's ludicrous to me. I'm laughing because it's comical. How is it that these Big Ten programs are going to get $100 million apiece per year once this media deal is negotiated? And the athletes have access to NIL, but they cannot use one stitch of Illini gear. They can't even wear an Illini t-shirt, take a picture for a company that they have an agreement with. They can't even do that. They can't use any of the schools they can't use the logo. They can't use the school name. They can't use a picture of the very jersey that they make money for the schools. So Jalen Rose, he can't get any of that money that his name is on the jersey. He can't get any of that money. And now if Bally Sports wanted to cut a deal with Jalen Rose and him being at Michigan, and Jalen Rose wanted to do something, he couldn't use the big block M. He can't use anything Wolverines. He can't use anything Michigan. How crazy is that? That we allow this to happen. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, the media is the most powerful tool on the planet. I'm going to say this again. The media is the most powerful tool on the planet because the media can make the guilty look innocent, and the media can also make the innocent look guilty. We see it every day, right? And so these romantic notions, why people are up in arms when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12 and went to the SEC, and why people are kind of like, oh, what is this? UCLA and USC joined the Big 10 because we got these notions, because the media has been banging it in our heads over decades of these student athletes. Oh, and they get their college tuition paid for. Come on, guys. Miss me with that. I'm ranting, so thanks for letting me rant. FYI, Big Ten current TV major markets: New York, Chicago 3, DC 8. Oh, Dory Melman Pesrio is a tribe member, and she's breaking it down. I got to pin this one. We had this one pinned, Dory. The Big Ten current television markets, major markets: New York 1, Chicago 3, DC 8, Detroit 12, Minneapolis 15, St. Louis. Because of the Illini. That's right. St. Louis 21, Baltimore 26, Indianapolis 27, Columbus 32, Milwaukee 35. Dory Melman Pesrio bringing it strong. Thank you, Dory. She's a tribe member. So look at those television markets. And ladies and gentlemen, compare the television markets in the SEC for any conference. But check out the SEC. The SEC has some good ones. Houston, number 4 market. Who else would they have? They'd have the New Orleans market. They'd have the Birmingham market, the Atlanta market, Miami, Charlotte, a little bit of DC. They get some of the DC market because of Virginia and Virginia Tech. Boston, somewhat of New York because of Syracuse. So they've got some nice ones too. But Dory hit it on the head. I want you guys to screenshot this because that's what this is. That's all this conference realignment is television markets. That's it. Great job, Dory. Thank you so much. That's why you want to be a part of the tribe, ladies and gentlemen. This is the inner city that is Bardo's Breakdown. You can text me 312-847-2739. You'll be on the inner portion of Bardo's Breakdown, so you get stuff first. I'm going to start doing these program updates, and I'm going to interview coaches, and I will give clips to everyone else, but I'm giving the full coaches interviews to my inner circle, and I'm going to allow them to ask me questions that I can say, Coach Underwood, Dory Melman Pesrio wants to know blank. And I'm going to ask him that question. He's going to answer it, and I'm going to give that to the tribe because they've been rocking with me since day one. So Dory and the rest of the tribe members, love you very much. Thank you for your support. And thank you for that wonderful post right here because that's spot on. That's what we're talking about right there. All right. Great job. Antonio Hobson Sr. I ain't seen you in a while, Antonio. Good to see you. With NIL implemented, location is everything. It is, Antonio. Location is important, but television market is king. In this game, in the college sports media game, television market, location is king. What's up, Kevin White? Good to see you, my man. Kevin White, tribe member. Do you think athletes like Jalen Rose and others like him will be able to go back and sue for lost earnings? No, Anastasia, because if they did, because the NCAA is getting crushed with litigation, and the reason the NCAA wanted to go to the government to get some legislation around NIL to make it level is so that they could sort of corral it, but they didn't get that. So that's why the NIL is all over the place. And so if former players are able to come back and sue for those, the NCAA would not exist. They'd go broke. They wouldn't be able to pay out the money. If they lost those court cases, they would never be able to pay out the money that is owed to those players. Because think about it. Let's take the Flying Illini, for example. A couple of years ago, I shared with you all on Bardo's Breakdown, there was a study done, and this was pre-Brad Underwood, Illinois men's basketball program. This was probably around the time that John Gross was the head coach, and Illinois was not very good. But at the time, this study showed that if you were one of the 15 college basketball players at the University of Louisville, you would make $1.5 million a year if the NCAA used the same model that the NBA uses to divvy up player revenue, right? Based on the television revenue, merchandise, apparel, all that stuff. What the NBA does is they give 48 to 49% of all that to the Players Association and players' salaries and whatnot. So what this person did, they used all the information that you could get from these programs, and they came up that Louisville program is the most profitable men's basketball program in the country. Those players would get 1.2 to 1.5 per year. Each player, not the starters, not the reserves, all of them. The University of Illinois program was bringing in $470,000 per player during the John Gross era, which was not the most successful era of college in Illinois men's basketball history. So if we look at the flying Illini, and obviously the numbers going back would not be what they are today, but it would be safe to say that we would get 100,000, 150,000 per year. And that would be for 4 years. Each year we get probably 150,000 a year. Now, if you were to take that and you multiply it across the board for Big Ten schools, and you do the calculation, and then you go back and do those figures, and then and sue the NCAA for that money, they can never repay that. So good in theory, Anastasia, but in reality, could never happen. Let's see. Does John Green, very good question. Does NIL, in your opinion, level the playing field? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, ladies and gentlemen, name, image, and likeness. Each program pays that much. They don't pay anything. NIL is simply a way for the athletes to have the ability to go out and cut a deal with a business or a clothing brand or a service or whatever. Schools don't have anything to do with it. So it does not level the playing field whatsoever, because I would argue the 100 million. Well, no, let's not even talk about the 100 million. Let's talk about what the Big Ten programs have been getting. Let's go with the $50 million mark, right? How in the hell does a program get $50 million a year and not have to cut back anything? They don't have to pay any portion of that back to the freaking players that made the money. So NIL is a way to allow these here's how I look at it, John. NIL is a way for these players to recoup some of the money that their parents and guardians or whoever has been taking care of them, to pay for the training, to pay for the camps, to pay for the medical bills that occur when you play sports at a high level, to pay for the travel. It gives athletes an opportunity to maybe recoup some of that money that their family has doled out already. That, to me, is what NIL is. But to think that these programs can make $50 million and not have to even consider a profit sharing situation with the people that made the money. Where does that take place in the United States, ladies and gentlemen? Please give me a situation where that takes place. We're talking 50 million per 14 schools. So what is that? That's 700 million. That's the part that they can afford to pay the schools. That's not even the part that the networks keep in their own pocket, ladies and gentlemen. So the Big Ten is going to be generating probably $1 billion a year in media rights money. And the people that make that happen, you don't have to cut a check at all to them. You think you're doing something by allowing them to go and cut an extra deal? Man, that's garbage. Please, miss me with that. That's how I feel about it. So am I disgruntled? Nope, I'm not disgruntled. That's reality. If I look at every career in the United States right now, if I look at every career in the United States and the workers, the management, the C-suite level, the CEO, the shareholders, everybody's getting something. The people that work to make the product and service, they're getting paid. A college education is not what it was worth 3 decades ago, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. We're living in the past. So I don't know, man. I can go on all day about that. Anastasia says, I find myself being in love with the nostalgia of the Big Ten when I was at Illinois. Do you feel the same, or are you excited about USC and UCLA? Anastasia, with the question of the day. Anastasia, do you see the smile on my face? I'm excited as hell. You know why? Because I might get a break in the middle of February and go out to sunny LA to call some USC and UCLA games. I'm excited as hell because I'm looking at it from a personal standpoint. Look, college sports is taking the gloves off, ladies and gentlemen. It's all, there's no nostalgia or anything. It's all dollars and cents. I think we see that now, right? So they're selfish. I'm going to be selfish. I love UCLA and USC coming into the fold. One, both of those programs are hyper competitive. People look at UCLA because they've had a resurgence. USC has averaged 21 to 23 wins over the last 5 or 6 years. USC is a quality basketball program. So they're definitely going to up the ante in terms of men's basketball in the Big Ten Conference. So yes, I'm excited about that, but I'm more excited about possibly going to LA in January and February to get a break from this hawk. That's what I'm excited about. That was one of the things I loved when I worked at ESPN. I loved covering the West Coast Conference because I'd be out there once a week during the winter, and I could be at Pepperdine and look at the water polo and beach volleyball teams working out, in 70, 80 degree weather, and I'm going in to call a college basketball game. You don't get that in the Midwest and the East Coast in the winter. So yes, I'm happy as hell for that. William Gates, very good question. Yes. Will college basketball and football become its own system in the collegiate level? It's been talked about this for a long time, William Gates. That's why the college football playoff situation, they're not governed by the NCAA. They govern themselves. So it was going this way. It was going this direction. And so that's why these conferences, these super conferences, are going to manage themselves at some point, I believe within the next 5 years. Anastasia Walker, has Notre Dame always given the Big Ten the Heisman? Great question. I thought maybe back in the day when University of Chicago was part of the Big Ten Conference, Anastasia, I thought Notre Dame may have had a small window when they were in the Big Ten. Maybe. I'm not sure on that. For some reason, I'm leaning in that direction, but I'm not sure on that. But that's a very good question. Man, you guys are spot on today. I don't know half the teams Notre Dame plays now, but I suspect their schedule will be on the come up, playing more top 25 teams. Here's the deal, Anastasia. What Notre Dame did was they scheduled they had Clemson. I know they would do Clemson. I think they would choose a few schools in the ACC to fill out the rest of their schedule. So they had Notre Dame versus USC. Oh, they used to do the Michigan State, Purdue. They used to have a certain number of Big Ten schools. I can't remember, Anastasia, but I know that they would fill in their football schedule with ACC opponents, selected ACC opponents, in addition to their year in, year out head-to-heads. So that's what that looks like. But I just wanted to come on here and, kind of give my take on the Big Ten programs. Pretty soon we'll be bringing in $100 million per year. And that's what we're looking at now with the Big Ten Conference, ladies and gentlemen. I know we focus on basketball. College football is pushing all of this college conference realignment. And luckily for the Big Ten programs, they're getting great programs that want to come in like USC and UCLA. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. I like to go and every now and then when there's a big topic, I like to go and rant and rave. But I appreciate you guys really tuning in and supporting Bardo's Breakdown. Again, if you want to be a part of the Inner Circle, text me 312-847-2739. 312-847-2739. That'll do it. You guys have a great rest of your week. And if something big happens, you know I'll have it covered. Until next time, y'all. Love y'all. Peace.